I hate tipping. When the norm was 10 or 15% if the service was extraordinary, I didn't mind as much. It still bothered me, but now it infuriates me. I can't think of a rational reason to continue the practice. Supposedly the word tip was an acronym for to ensure promptness, but that only makes sense if you tip before you are served. After you are served, the only promptness you'll receive is them promptly pushing you out the door. First of all, the system isn't fair. There have been studies that prove that blondes are tipped better than other hair colors. I guess that's why blondes have more fun. They can afford it. I'm not sure if there are other things that determine the tip that have nothing to do with service. Do heavy people get less? Do unattractive people get stiffed? Conversely, do attractive men and women receive more from members of the opposite sex? There isn't a definite guideline as to tipping. Do you tip people at Starbucks, but not at McDonald's? McDonald's will deliver your food to your table, but you have to order it at the counter. So, because I sit down when I order my food, I should pay 10 to 25% more? If that's the case, then when you go to a fancy restaurant next time, that person standing at the table, ordering, would be me. I've gone to restaurants like Golden Corral, where the server is basically serving you drinks. You're serving yourself the food. Some of them, like Country Buffet, they don't even do that. At the Golden Corral, do I base my tip on the price of the drinks? From what I understand, you exclude the tax when you are figuring out the tip, but I don't think many people do. This leads people to pay more for their meals. Some friends have said that if I don't want to tip, I shouldn't, which to me is tantamount to saying if I don't want to pay my taxes, don't. There's a lot of societal pressure to conform to this ludicrous norm, but it's not going to end by me not leaving a tip. My wife was on a high school trip, went with her class to a Chinese restaurant, and because the class had limited funds, they didn't tip. The waiter followed them out the door yelling, "Tip, tip!" Now, tips should be voluntary, but this waiter seemed to think he was entitled. Legally, tips are a gift, so why are we gifting people for doing their job? I know that many people give gifts or tips to the mail person, garbage collector, etc. at Christmas time, but they don't do it every day they bring the mail or pick up the garbage. In 1987, I knew a person who was working at Catskill Resort as a waiter and was making the state minimum for tip people of $2.30 an hour. This seemed unfair because the minimum for non-tipped workers was $3.25. He was, however, making $700 a week or $17.50 an hour in tips. This is a lot for a person who, as Johnny Castle says,
"You just put your pickle on everybody's plate, college boy, and leave the hard stuff to me."
Whoa. Tips have gone full circle. It began in Europe when the aristocrats would tip their servants or give them little gifts. Americans going over to Europe saw this practice and thought they would imitate the elites. Americans brought it to this country to try to keep up with the European elites. After the Civil War, many blacks became service workers. Some of these were paid $0 as a wage and were supposed to survive on tips. Many of the people in America didn't like the idea of tipping, and a lot of them protested against it. This, however, traveled over to Europe, and now tipping is not prevalent in Europe. Looks like they were smarter than we were. The blame for this situation falls squarely on the NRA. No, not the one that believes that you should have the right to shoot up the restaurant. The National Restaurant Association. They lobbied to keep the pay low and have managed to keep it that way. They claim that increasing the wages would lead to the demise of the restaurant industry. So, how does Europe survive? One of the reasons I don't like tipping is that if I go to a restaurant for a meal that I have called up and asked how much it was going to be, and it was $100, I better bring more than $100. Wouldn't it be better to charge $120 or $125 and pay the workers the difference? But the owners would then be paying their fair share of taxes, because they would be making more money technically and paying their workers for their work instead of you paying them for their work. I can assure you that if the restaurants had to pay taxes on the full amount, they would end tipping. If I go to a Walmart and ask for something that they have in the back room, I don't tip the clerk for getting it, and they don't tack on a service charge. It's included in the price. The meal is a product, and delivery should be included in the price. And every time you tip, it is. But you don't realize that. Will it hurt small restaurants? Probably. And it may end up like Demolition Man when every restaurant is Taco Bell.
You do not realize that Taco Bell was the only restaurant to survive the franchise wars.
So,
Now all restaurants are Taco Bell.
no way.
Fortunately, or unfortunately, we may not have to worry about that. With AI and robots getting better, you soon may be served by a robot. Other countries already have robot waiters. Do you have to tip Reggie the robot? Or is that just crazy? Why is it that people consider it acceptable to watch someone's YouTube channel and not subscribe? Most YouTubers need the subscription to grow their channels and to make money. In a sense, a subscription is like a tip for a waitress. Probably 90% of you leave a tip even when you get bad service. I can't believe that you all exclusively eat at fast food restaurants to avoid leaving a tip. So please, subscribe. And I promise not to spit in your food.